Hi, this is Brad with Copper Creek Cuts with some footage that I have sat on for almost a year. This is a 100-hour service interval on our Ventrac 4520P. It's a little bit closer to 112 hours, but the biggest thing about the 100-hour service interval is this is the first time you're going to mess with the hydraulic system. There are two hydraulic filters that you'll use. They have different micron settings, but that's what we're removing here is the larger of the two filters. At least on my configuration, my hydraulic filters are horizontal, which means you need some spill trace to catch because there is no way to avoid a mess. You also don't need to worry about pre-filling these filters because they're installed horizontally, so you'd just be making a big mess. One thing I've learned from watching YouTube is always to write the date and hour interval on those oil filters when you change them. That's especially important if you have multiple people touching machines so they know when maintenance needs to be done. This is the amount of oil that was lost during that procedure. Not a ton, but definitely more than you would like to have spilling on the ground. So make sure you've got some kind of cat's tray. Make sure you've got some cat litter. This is the smaller of the two filters. It's right next to the back right rear wheel. It's next to the back right wheel. This is easier if you aren't trying to film it because the camera is kind of in the way of everything. Just make sure you've got the new one ready to go because as soon as you unplug it, you will be losing some fluid. I did not tighten these filters down enough. I was afraid of over tightening them, and I have seen some leaks underneath the Ventrac. It's not a big deal. It's a couple drops, so you just reach down with your hand and tighten the filter a little bit more. But if you're somebody who doesn't like to go real tight on oil filters, at least with those hydraulic ones, I found that you will get some leaking if you don't really get them nice and tight. I believe for the 100-hour service, inspecting the air filter is all you really need to do. But with the way that this one looks, we're just going to go ahead and replace that outer element. The inner one looks fine, so we'll go ahead and reuse it. The only thing that was a little tricky on this is that if you do not pull the side panels off, there are some clearance issues with the cap, which, you know, maybe you can get away with if you find a different mounting position, but all I did was use a little bit of a long tool to get some leverage, and it wasn't any kind of big deal. Whenever you do oil changes, if your pan is not shallow enough, you will need some kind of a drip catch. I just used some cardboard, which is probably not the most effective or environmentally friendly, but it's what I did. And this is the easiest way I found to drain the engine oil, which again is part of the 100-hour service, changing the filter and engine oil as well. The maintenance on these machines, I will say there are some areas that are tighter just because it is a compact machine, and in this instance you do have to remove a side panel. There's really no way around it. But none of it's really difficult, it just takes a little bit more time. The Ventrac also has a sticker under the hood where you can log your maintenance. That's always a good idea as well. What type of oil to use is a big discussion point in Ventrac owner forums. At least for me, the extra cost of name brand, I don't mind paying it. If you want to follow the manual to the T, they recommend that anyways. And of course, you'll have people who say, well, it's just a big conspiracy theory. It's just rebranded oil that you can get from somewhere else. I don't know if that's true or not. I just know I'm going to spend a couple extra bucks and get what the manufacturer says. Maybe once it's out of warranty, that's a different story. But at least in the meantime, I'm using everything genuine to make sure I don't run into any problems. And then the last part is going to be adding a little bit to that overflow tank, just so we can make up for what I spilled during the filter change. And that's really all there is to the 100-hour service interval for the Ventrac 4520P. One thing to note is that if you have a different engine, your 100-hour interval will probably look different. It may have different steps. And you always want to make sure and run the machine after. Check for leaks for the hydraulic filters that you just changed out, for the engine filters that you just changed out. You want to make sure you didn't leave any gaskets on the engine block or on the hydraulic system. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what some of the long-term maintenance is like on these Ventrac machines. If you've got any questions, leave them down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate it.